And we have a panelist. The panelist that I would like to introduce to you is Ms. Sandra Cohen, Political Counselor of Embassy of France to Korea. So, with the three previous speakers and the panelists, we're going to have a panel discussion. Ms. Sandra Cohen, are you there?
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the floor. It's a great opportunity for me to talk in front of, after so many inspiring women. So my name is Sandra Cohen, and as you just introduced me, I am the political counselor of the French Embassy in Korea. I am also the gender equality advisor of the embassy. And this specific task is part of our feminist diplomacy, and my job is to advise the ambassador on how to implement concrete gender equality measures within the embassy to make sure that we avoid stereotypes in our communication, that we make sure to highlight women in all our events. So, although I am not a maritime leader, I think that there are some similarities between the challenges that we female diplomats are facing and what women leaders in maritime activities are also facing. And I think, Madam Chair, you have a greater experience than me on this issue. But I think that people who decide to join the maritime-related occupations or the diplomatic careers are usually doing it by passion, despite many constraints for the family. And we are in careers that have long been considered as male bastions, in some countries like France at least. And because we are in time of change, things have greatly improved, but even now, there are still some gender issues, family, social pressure, stereotypes, etc. So to get back at maritime issues, let me say that in France, the feminization rate is still low in the maritime sector, about 21%, 21.4%, but it's much better than it was 2 decades ago. So we have many examples of successful women in leadership positions, and I would like to share with you some inspiring example, and particularly in the French Navy, because women are now everywhere in the French Navy, even at the most physically challenging occupations. So the French Naval Academy has been accepting women only since 1993, so it's pretty recent, and it has trained around 10 female officers per year, and to present, 23 have risen to command a vessel. In 2022, we have the first woman appointed as Rear Admiral. In 2005, the first female admiral, and two more in 2012 and 2014. And in 2016, we had the first woman appointed as frigate captain, Commander Claire Potier. She is the commanding officer aboard Lafayette-class frigate Quai Prat, that's the name of the boat. So she became basically the first woman in the French Navy to command a combatant ship. And in 2021, we had the first woman who was appointed to lead a naval base. And last, since 2017, women are now allowed to serve in nuclear submarines. So many things have happened, and we have seen so many talented women rising on the top of the positions. We also have successful stories in other maritime-related sectors. First of all, our Minister of the Sea, she is a woman, Mrs. Annick Girardin. And we also had, until 2 years ago, a French woman who was heading the port of Marseille, which is a very major port in France. So I think it's very inspiring, and I wanted to highlight this achievement because they were deemed impossible a few years ago. So what made the difference? And I see three things that, in my opinion, helped and encouraged women. And I must say, it's quite the same recipe that works for diplomacy as well. So first, it's important to have national and international proactive policies, and I want to commend the work of IMO in this respect because it's giving a good impulse. It is hard to imagine any improvement without government commitment to address specific issues, etc. Second thing, things have changed because women have made efforts to empower themselves. That means that they realize their potential and they know their worth. And I would like to quote the woman admiral, Chantal Desbordes. She said that there is no need to be afraid. Women in general hesitate to put themselves forward because they are afraid of not being up to the task of what will everybody say. So if these women take the plunge, she said, they will find it interesting to work in a male world. Both sides have to play the game, and nothing is possible if no one comes part of the way to the other. So the last thing that I think is important in leadership in maritime sectors and in diplomacy, it is important to rely on women networks, and they provide so many type of support. For example, they can provide advice from peers of experts, good practice, knowledge. And in my ministry, for instance, we have such a group. We have a group called Women and Diplomacy, and it's very helpful to get some training before you have special interviews with the human resources. It's important to share with women who are confronted to the same issues in many parts of the world. And if for those who don't feel that they need support, I think the best thing is that they should realize it's time for them to give support to others, to become mentor and to lead by example. So it's part of this network of women, and that is something that I also do. So I find it very rewarding. I think I've spoken too long, so I will stop here, but I would like to thank the organizer for today's event. Very meaningful. Thank you.
Oh, Sandra,
Thank you. Please give a big hand to the political counselor, Ms. Sandra Cohen. She is working with the French embassy in Korea, and she is in charge of handling gender equality within the embassy. Well, I believe that gender equality manager like you should be everywhere across the public and private sector. And I can see that France has made a lot of progress in female leadership, particularly in the Navy. I can see that we have a captain for a battleship, and the Ministry of Ocean in France is also female. So that is really inspiring, and thank you so much for sharing with that. And she mentioned two important things for this change. Government commitment is one of them, like providing political support. And the second thing was making effort on their own, the female leaders. So that's a very important point. So thank you so much for sharing your experience and ideas. So with these two female leaders, I would like to ask some few questions.
So, Luis, you are an expert in the IMO, and Sandra is in the diplomacy, and you are all the experienced experts in your own field. So, in your own career, as you pursue your career, there might have been some challenges so far that you have experienced it. So, when something happens, when you face a crisis or challenge, how have you overcome these challenges? And what was your secret to turn these challenges into opportunities? I mean, you made it, that's why you are here. So, can you share your own personal experiences? Start with Louis, please.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to participate in the panel discussion and answer this very challenging question. Not so much a crisis, but one of the most significant challenges I have undertaken is commencing a career in the male-dominated maritime industry. It was a chance opportunity for me to commence employment with the Australian Maritime Safety Agency Authority, and I worked there for 9 years. And while Australia generally as a country is very supportive of women in the workplace and progressing into middle management and senior leadership positions, it is still, the maritime sector is still very male dominated as a general observation. And there were many times where I was the only female in the room, and offering opinions as a relatively young female as well, and trying to portray yourself with the authority and credibility that is needed to progress in leadership positions. It is a challenge, and I think for me, one of the biggest techniques or strategies that I use for myself is you really have to have a very strong sense of self and show up with that strength and resilience and that resolve, so that when you are faced with situations that would normally undermine you, you really have to draw on that inner strength to maintain your credibility. And for me, that's just something that I've always done, no matter how I might feel on the inside. That's not what I demonstrate on the outside, and it has done me well. I have progressed into a senior leadership position in the International Maritime Organization, and that is an organization itself which at my level there's only 33% women, so it was a big achievement for me, and I hope that other women in the audience and participating in this conference today will take something from that and have success in their own leadership journeys. Thank you.
산드라 씨는 특히 그 외교관으로서 저도 굉장히 많이 듣는 질문인데요. 한 나라에서 다른 나라 또 다른 나라로 굉장히 옮기는 직업이잖아요. 그런 직업을 계속하면서 또 여성이기 때문에 더 어려움이 있었을 텐데 이 부분 경험 한번 공유해 주시겠어요? You are a diplomat. As diplomat, I have many questions regarding my personal life because we have to move from one place to the other place, not just a place from one country in one continent to another continent. So you must have some difficulties in managing your work and life. So what kind of experience can you share with us?
Yeah, thank you. That's a very good question. Actually, I am a mother, and my daughter is 13 years old. And the first time I moved across continent was when I was pregnant, and I had to move to Japan. And I just discovered that I was pregnant while I was preparing my move to Japan. So it was very challenging to be in another country and to become a mother without the help of your family. And I moved to Japan, and I was a consul in Tokyo at the time when we had the tsunami and the big earthquake and the nuclear issues. So at that time, I was wondering if I made the good choice of career, if I didn't put my child in danger. And I was lucky to have the support of the team, the support of the ministry, the support of the family to overcome this fear. I think when we stay strong, when we stay focused, we can manage to control our fear, to stay focused on our job. Then we moved back again in France a few years later, and now we moved back to Korea. And it's still a challenge to see how I can raise my child, how I can be present with my child, because we have very long working hours, many commitments. But the thing is, my daughter is pleased to see that I'm passionate about my job, and I'm happy to show her what it is to be happy at work, what it is to be successful. And one thing I want to say is that I could never done it without my husband. It's always a couple issue. So I'm glad that France allows men to take some time off their job to follow their spouse. And I think that's a great thing. Thank you very much.
So I can see that when you are moving around the world, your husband has provided a lot of support, like taking a long-term parental leave. So that is the support of the governments, like you said, indeed. So I am so grateful that you have such support from the government as well. And today's theme for this session is women empowerment and entrance to the maritime industry. I know, and we all know that entering the maritime industry is not easy for women, particularly if you are targeting the high position in the industry. We have only 1 or 2% of female leaders in the field. So it is indeed a very difficult area for women to work and take some leadership position. But I believe that this issue can be applied to many other industries as well. They can enter any market or industry. However, if they want to be and play some managerial role in any industry, it becomes really difficult for them, like becoming a minister or becoming a top executive at a company. That is so difficult for women, regardless of where you are. It's the same issue for all countries. So I would like to have some talk about this issue. So why is it so difficult for women to take some leadership role or managerial role? Why is it so difficult?
So, Luis, you go first.
Thank you very much. And I think, it's a fantastic question. And the more that we can talk about this and understand the barriers, we can help break those down. In the maritime industry, as I said in my last answer, it is a male-dominated industry, and that is a tradition that has a long history, and it runs very deep in the culture of the maritime industry. And I think that the length of that history is proportionate to the length of time it takes for women to break into the industry, to progress through the ranks, and to gain enough experience to successfully compete against highly qualified and skilled males for these senior positions. They come with years and years of experience. They don't face the same cultural backgrounds. They've had very, long education and a lot of experience to build on from their past. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges. But, I also think that the having these sorts of conferences, the programs that we're undertaking, the political drive and the dialogue that's happening globally, I think that those sorts of things are starting to overcome the barriers for women to take leadership positions. Thank you.
Sandra?
And Sandra?
Same question.
So in diplomacy, what the main challenge for women is to believe they can do the job as well as men. They tend to think that they are not skilled enough, not competent enough, not trained enough. So one thing that we are doing in our women network is to train women who are preparing exams, because to get higher position, either you have to take a competition, either you have to take an appointment and you have to defend your file. So we are training them, we are looking at their career, and we are showing them, here, you've done something wonderful. There, you should highlight your skill, because nobody else has the same. So I think the main challenge is to overcome your fear and to go for it. Thank you.
지금 이제
So we had some talk about why women feel difficulties in going for managerial positions. So we talked about some cultural barriers, and we also talked about some lack of confidence in women. So yes. So, well, having said that, we have to tackle these challenges, right? As a woman, we have to work on our solidarity and network so that we can invite new, younger women for this. And we have to provide some good consulting for them. We have to be a good mentor so that they can be confident in themselves. So we have to take actions for that too. So this conference is part of that effort. Lee Convention opened this conference to provide that consulting for women workers. So I hope that more and more female workers can be confident in themselves and knock the doors that were never opened for other women earlier. So we have to motivate women more and more. So how can we motivate them? Can you briefly give some comment on that too? Can you start with Louis first?
그런데 고위직 진출을 위한 유리.
How can we break the glass ceiling, and what do we need to do to break down the glass ceiling, and what can we do for the younger women, new generation? Any thoughts? Can you share with us? Sandra, please.
Oh, definitely. I think to motivate women, you have to show them a good example of successful and happy women. It's important to be happy in your work so that people know that you can do it and be successful. So one thing that I found very inspiring is to listening to testimonies, experience of higher ranked women. And when I listen to them, I see that they overcame many difficulties and it's possible. So I found this very inspiring, and that's what I would recommend.
루이스 씨.
Louis, please.
Thank you very much. Speaking from the International Maritime Organization and our program, we are about intervening at the early stages of females' career development and offering them the same opportunities for education and work experience, so that when it comes time to putting their best foot forward and channeling or overcoming the fear, as Sandra put it, I think that they feel more confident, consistently raising awareness of the barriers and talking about proactive measures that organisations can take to integrate women into the maritime sector is critical, to ensure that the mindsets and the changes that are needed to happen can become embedded in the norm of an organisation's culture rather than the exception. And the way that we do that at the IMO is through the International Maritime Law Institute and the World Maritime University. So the International Maritime Law Institute was the first UN body to set a minimum requirement that at least 50% of students be women. And the World Maritime University is also making very good progress in increasing the number of women students, currently around 40%. So I think, there's very tangible things we can do like that in terms of training and experience. But then I think there's some of that softer stuff that Sandra is talking about in terms of people's mindsets, their confidence, their overcoming fears, and those sorts of things in terms of, networks and governments also supporting women to have a family through government policies and, being able to have that balance, because as Sandra said, of course, when you're faced with a decision between family and employment, family has a resounding factor in people's decision making, and if they don't feel that they can manage both employment and lifestyle and family commitments, then that becomes a real challenge. So I think that government policies have a big role to play. Thank you.
네, 두 분 말씀 아주 감사합니다.
Thank you for your comments. So to enable women to go for those high positions, I believe that we have to raise the gender awareness, particularly for the general public first. And as a diplomat, reflecting on my personal experience, when I first joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Korea, only 0.1% of the personnel were female. We had a lot of ambitious women back then, but they didn't just go for this field because they thought that diplomats are just an occupation preserved for male. So they were just not confident themselves back then. But now things have changed. And in our ministry, for the junior level, 60% or more than 60% are female. So that's a great change over the last 3 or 4 decades. So the government is also supporting the female workers, particularly in those professional fields. And I, believe that female workers need to take some great pride and confidence in themselves so that they can go further. So I personally witnessed such progress in the diplomatic scene in Korea. So I would like to ask all the people here and the panelists that because you are the senior member of your field now, you can be a role model for younger generation. So I hope that you can show that there are great possibilities and opportunities and new path for them. You have to help them navigate new path. So I believe that our future generation, female workers, can do a better job in the future. So once again, thank you so much for taking time for this discussion. And I would also like to thank all the audience to be with us, for being with us for today's conference. So this will be the end of the session. Thank you so much, everyone.